And we're live. This is the Quick and Dirty, your source of information for dummies in a hurry. Your really quick and dirty informations for on Wednesday night. I am Joey Laflamme, and I am with Nicolas Pidiktakis. How are you doing, sir?
Not too bad given the circumstances. How about you, my friend?
I'm doing I'm doing great actually. I have popped an edible earlier on, and it's just starting to kick in, which
Oh
is
God,
perfect.
okay.
Like I was all okay during all like
Mm,
all before the podcast. I was all
yeah,
fine, and then
yeah.
the podcast kick in, and I'm like, ooh, that's fucking smooth. And then I feel like, yeah, I'm a bit high. All right, so first subject, I think you wanted to go back on the Bill C10. There have been some development around that. If
Yeah.
you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the development is that they said that they're going to make it crystal clear that now it's not gonna hit the content creators, but now
Yeah.
they say it's gonna be only the big content creators.
Yeah, so for those who are watching and still don't understand what Bill C10 is, Bill C10 is a bill that was introduced by the Liberal government in the House, where it is going to touch on a lot of issues with like the CRTC, which is like the main regulatory body for like radio, television, and now increasingly our online content, so like the main social media companies, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and all that, as well as other platforms like the streaming services like Netflix, Disney Plus, Crave up here in Canada, Paramount Plus, and others that are currently being used to this day. Um, the one thing that has to be said about this bill, and one of the things that sort of brought a lot of controversy to it, was there was this lack of clarity or understanding over how many of the biggest content creators, especially on YouTube, are going to be affected. What I mean by some of the biggest content creators are folks like, Mike Ward's Suzekut could have been affected, as he's one of the biggest podcasts here in Quebec, or you have some other personalities like Matthew Santoro, who was at one point with Nicole Arbor, Lily Singh, if she still has any major connection to Canada, because I know she may have moved to the United States. Another channel that I always think of in terms of as a Canadian-based content creator and someone that I love, and a channel that I love watching, is Linus Tech Tips, based in Surrey, BC. Where they discuss a lot about technology, networking, video gaming, computers, updates to technology, and as well, and I just remember this off the top of my head, like here in Quebec, we have the YouTuber known as like Thomas Gauthier, who is considered the so-called Quebecois arch nemesis to the other major Canadian pundit slash journalist by the name of JJ McCullough.
Yeah.
Who writes for the Washington Post, and he has his channel. Like, I love watching his videos too.
Yeah.
So you have many of these content creators who are producing a lot of content that may or may not have any relevance towards so-called Canadian culture, which
But
has
we don't
always
know
been the case.
because they just said big content creators. So
Yeah.
like basically they didn't say like at which how you're considered as being a big content creators, and that's where it's getting, because the nature of the beast is like it's just now we're having not a lot of views, but all of a sudden we might go viral for the dumbest fucking reason, like for no reason at all.
Yeah.
And then what, like all of a sudden it will be regulated by the CRDC. So like the whole content, like the whole thing we're doing right now, it's predicated on the fact that we're not regulated by the CRDC or anything else of that sort. So to me that doesn't make sense at all. Like basically, like all of a sudden I'll have to change my whole fucking content just to comply with those rules as soon as we get big. That is that what I'm understanding?
To an extent, I think that is the case. Again, it goes to this issue where there is this, I would say, insecurity within the Canadian cultural establishment, in that, by and large, all of us always seek, like many Canadians, both, the English, the Anglos, and of course the Quebecois, like a lot of us don't want to feel like we're being forced to watch content that has been created simply because there's this notion of like content nationalism.
Yeah.
Like a lot of us, by and large, always want to try to find ways to access American content on some of their networks like ABC, NBC, Fox, and some of the other channels that are there, like HBO, for example. So there's always been this, I would say, again, that insecurity that is there. Like for me, like some of the stuff that is uniquely Canadian, of course, like I watched willingly, of course,
Yeah.
who didn't way back in the day watch Mr. Dress Up growing up, or very recently the show Kim's Convenience, which was
I like it. I
developed like
fucking love it.
it's a hilarious
Yeah.
show. Who doesn't love watching? Though I don't remember the name of the actor, but like the Appa, I think his name was like the fatherly figure who's like the actor who was in the Mandalorian. Like who doesn't love watching a show like Kim's Convenience, or of course. Crave Canada at one point produced the first and so far only season of Canada's Drag Race, which is Canada's version of RuPaul's Drag Race. Like, who wouldn't want to
Dude,
watch
that
that?
was so hilarious the way you said it because it's like who doesn't want to watch great Canadian show like Kim Convenience and that show and Kim Convenience like you named two times fucking Kim Convenience.
Like, that's the thing. Like, not
Yeah.
all of us, or like show like movies and other things that may have been produced in Canada or may have had a lot of production done in Canada, but isn't necessarily Canadian. Like, there's like very blurred line. Like, for example, like two shows that I know off the top of my head that are filmed in Canada, but of course aren't Canadian: Riverdale and Chilling Adventures of Sabrina for Netflix, based in BC. You have like the first two Deadpool film, like the first and second Deadpool film. Like Scott Pilgrim versus the World certainly had a lot of like filming in Toronto.
Where also Vancouver is well known as being North Hollywood.
Yeah. So there's always been, and of course in terms of and by the way, hello Mel, hope you're doing
chat.
well, Rapimo. And as well, like whenever there are these discussions like, oh, we have to produce Canadian content, there's always been that, I would say, rider where some of that content absolutely has to be for the Quebecois as well. Like, I'm not like, I don't like, for me, if I want to willingly watch French content, I'll watch, of course, Pantelis' French cast, or Mike Ward's Suzakoots, of course. I think something that was popular, like the Quebecois version of Big Brother, which had the drag queen Rita Baga.
Yeah, that was Big Brother celebrity.
Yeah.
Basically, the idea is it's not like a bunch of fucking no names from Quebec. It's just like a bunch of celebrities doing Big Brother.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or if I wanted to watch other French content, like you have like Thomas Levaque's Coupe Ouverte. That's something that
Coupe Ouverte. Yeah, it's they won. I think they won the Olivier de l'année for podcasting, like our comedy award. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about it. I'm good. You know what? I have in the internet. I can check it out.
Well, anyways, as you're checking that out, like it goes to this issue where a lot of people, like, again, like the internet still to an extent is a largely free and open place. Like, pieces of legislation like this just it feels like more and more that last bastion of, I would say, relative freedom is under threat, like given what's going on with like China and the Great Wall and the virtual Great Wall, or how in several countries in the Middle East, like Twitter and Facebook are blocked off because there's offensive content there, of the content. Like, again, this goes to the issue of are you that insecure and that weak a culture when you're using the coercive power of government or the coercive power of society to enforce?
Yes, because to be honest, like, explain me what Canada is, right? Like, compared to the US, what makes us so fucking unique from the US? Nothing. Free healthcare, and you see how we hang on to that, and fucking monarchy, but most of them doesn't fucking care about it anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah. So by the way, I confirm it's the podcast, the Thomas Levac, but I just want to show it to you because to me it's fucking hilarious.
Of course.
Like, yeah, it's dumb. It's kind of an out topic, but it's kind of funny. Look at that. So avec son Sam, it's actually his podcast name, right? Perdre. Actually, the title of his podcast, Wagner, same thing, and What's Up Podcast, exactly the same thing. Here is le podcast de Thomas Levac, which is Thomas' podcast, basically. So they didn't bother to fucking put the title of the guy who won. They just like, fuck, yeah, his fucking podcast. His podcast is called like Coupe Ouverte, not this fucking podcast. Anyway, just a little thing that was kind of weird to me.
No, it is. It is. So we have to be on guard on this, given the implications for us guys that are just trying to do our best on this front.
Yeah.
Some, from what I've understood in terms of the changing political reality on the bill, I know that the conservatives will be. Hola, Steph. ¿Cómo estás? Like I know for a fact that the conservatives will be opposing this by and large.
Oh yeah, for sure. But they're alone. Like the NDP, like all the left establishment is behind the Bill C10 actually. Like you have the Bloc Québécois that already is gonna vote for it. The NDP is already want to vote for it, and the PLC. So
I think the NDP may have flipped on it, given a lot of anger from a lot of
their
their
base.
base, or just from people who typically voted
Hmm.
for the NDP. But that certainly could be confirmed later on. But again, C10, it's just like, don't they have more important issues that they could be worrying about at the federal level? Like, again, the skyrocketing deficit that we've accumulated given the year in lockdown, are worsening, relations with different countries, and we still have those two Canadians that are locked up in China arbitrarily that they need to be resolved, and a whole host of other things in terms of our infrastructure. Like, don't they have better things to be worrying about instead of like this? Like, this is again sort of tie into maybe the next segment, given how there's this insecurity all the time. We're seeing that insecurity again manifesting itself, given what's going on in the Quebec National Assembly with the proposed changes to Law 101, which is the Quebec
Yes.
language charter.
So yeah,
Like,
just to confirm what you said about the NDP, yes, they're gonna just put it on. They want to put it on hold until like the Justice Department
does
take
an
a look at it.
analysis.
Yeah,
Of course,
exactly.
of course.
So there you
No,
go.
of course.
It's done. So you want to keep going on the French for the French thing?
Yeah.
Okay, so as you were saying, there were those new push on the Bill 101 to add other domain to regulate.
Yeah, so what's going on that front again, and this is what usually happens when, things aren't doing so well. All of the parties, unfortunately, like the Quebec provincial Liberals have done this on occasion. The Parti Québécois obviously have done this, and now the CAQ,
for
given
sure.
that they are reigning supreme. Like I saw at one point, like they can command an effective supermajority in the National Assembly. Like I saw in the most recent polls on QC125, which is like a polling website that I personally trust a lot to get all of that information in terms of polls. The Parti Québécois are at point to getting only 2 seats.
Yeah, but
in
they
the
have no
National
reason to
Assembly.
exist anymore, in my humble
Yeah.
opinion. Because the Bloc Québécois are the only reason they exist now is because of separation of Quebec. But like most people, like just doesn't give a fuck. Not giving a fuck, but short term, mid term, they know it's not gonna happen anytime soon. They're still for it, but they don't think it's gonna happen. Like soon. So a lot of these people, they just vote for the cat because people kind of forgot that the CQ is still a nationalist party.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like François Legault was a biggest minister.
A former
he was
PQ minister.
He's still a separatist, I think.
Well, aside from those realities, to get back to the issue of the language laws, what they're proposing, what some of the stuff that they're proposing in terms of doing is getting some of the smaller sized businesses from, like, let's say you have like 29 to 50 employees, you'll be required to provide and to conduct business only in French. Like there are other things, like again, like the Quebec government recently announced that all like more and more of their official communications to the general public and in terms of internal communications will only be conducted in French. Like for me, I'm lucky in that whenever I have to do my like my Medicare card renewal, like driver's license, I still get those letters in English.
Yeah,
because of my language preference. But that could soon change, and that I will be forced to do all of that stuff in French, which for me, again, like my French has certainly gotten better, but there's still a lot of work to be done. But at the same time, again, speaking as someone who is, I would say, a second generation immigrant here, like I have to juggle at times three languages in my head, English, French, and Greek. Like sometimes like I mix up even English on the rare occasion. I mix up, the verbs and conjugation and other things. So like when you're in a position such as mine, like myself, or even the very recently landed immigrants coming to Montreal, specifically from parts of the world where French nor English were their first language, or they had only rare access. It's it's very daunting when it's only natural that you want to maintain a sense of fluency and connection to your own culture. Again, for me, being Greek myself.
Mm.
Also having to learn how to speak French with a very limited timetable. Like I find it personally bullshit that they say you have 3 years to learn the entire language fluently, or else you're getting out. Like, come on,
You're
show
born
some
here.
patience. Like, show
Yeah.
some patience and understanding, please. And as well, the fact that English, of course, who doesn't want to learn English, given the fact that it still is the international business language of the world. Like, I remember hearing an example, I think, from a past politics professor, or I think a history professor. There was a group of, like, I think scientists from Quebec that went to France to attend some sort of conference. And when they're at that conference in France, everything was conducted in English. And the Quebecois
Mm.
scientists were like, why isn't everything done in French? And the scientists from France are like, no, we're doing this in English because English is the international business language. Like,
Yeah.
follow along, please. It's like,
Yeah, that was the same thing like for me in Polisai. I was mainly when I was doing Polisai, I was mainly studying like international relation, and I
yeah,
found that like a lot of French article was subpar compared like to the one made in the United States or in the UK, or let's
yeah,
say I had more a bigger pool of
yeah,
access to information because like Germans were writing in English, and that's the same
yeah,
thing pretty much everywhere. So
yeah. So one I saw recently, I think it was on the Montreal Gazette or on CTV Montreal, that a majority of the small businesses that would have been affected by the proposed change have actually said no, they're not in favor of these changes. In terms of forcing more and more things to be done in French, like many of these companies, of course, would have to establish like a franchisation committee where again they have to translate all of their like internal procedure documents and to have like all labels and posters in French at their office. So like again, I understand past historical realities as someone who studied history,
mm,
but this is also something that is meant to drum up support from the nationalist base because again, a lot of people are viewing the pandemic response from Legault's government as piss poor in terms of like the mismanagement of potential support to businesses that were shut down,
lack of
the lack of a
transparencies,
yeah,
the lack of
yeah.
coherence. Yeah,
Not to mention, the fact that again the debt has skyrocketed, the
yeah.
fact that a lot of people still view our vaccine rollout as being piss poor. Like again, like a lot of like one thing that has to be like at the next provincial election, which is next year, and at the future federal election, we objectively need to demand that we need to build our own vaccine a bit like capacity back.
Yeah, like having because we discovered pretty soon with COVID-19 at the beginning that we had a problem with like those
The
reading
PPE,
assistants. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
the
PE.
PPE ventilators and all
Yeah,
that. We didn't
exactly.
have
We
an
had a lot
industrial.
of fucking issues with that. The masks. We also like the vaccines because, like, in theory, like sending everything to be made in China, that kind of makes sense because when it comes back to you, it's fucking cheap. The problem is when they fucking need it themselves and they stop sending it over to you because they don't have enough even for their own people. That's where you start having a fucking problem because
Yeah,
now you send everything you're making over
yeah,
there and you're not making anything here. So
yeah. So they need to again. This is just a smoke show meant to divert attention
yeah,
elsewhere.
yeah.
Like I feel like this is what happens a lot of the time in the United States, for example, where you have a lot of Republicans and even some Democrats like always talk like bringing up the issue of abortion, like hot topic issues that are meant to stir up fervor on both sides of the issue. Like
Mm.
folks, come the next election, let's demand the building up of a vaccine manufacturing capacity. I understand that it is expensive. I do understand that, but I think given what has happened to us over the last year, I think that is one of those expenses that the public would understand needs to be done.
All
So
right.
like demanding potential like 10 paid sick days, getting more
There's
vacations and doing other like that's the stuff that we need to focus on, not, whipping up French. Again,
yeah.
patience, folks.
Yeah, like and also there's also the issues like you say you were talking about those fuck I forgot my thought. Jesus Christ,
Give it a
my bad.
second. Give it a second. It's like talking about like vaccine rollouts, government
Yeah,
debt.
okay, yeah, that like the manufacturer thing, like making sure that we're making the vaccine over there, here, right?
Yeah,
Like that gives jobs too, so that's expensive, but we spend money on dumb shit, like
like
on
the OQLF, for example.
yeah, the UQLF,
The
but not
excessive
just
bureaucracy
the
here in
excessive
Quebec.
bureaucracy, like and also in terms of like giving away subventions to subsidies to companies, like we're one of the worst in Canada.
Bombardier.
Yeah, by a large margin. Like they say that we're the capital of AI in Montreal, but that's not true. It's just because we pay like 30 to 40% of the salaries of people working in AI in Montreal.
Well, also our still relatively affordable energy, but that's another thing altogether.
Exactly, there's that too.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, affordable, but we don't. We even there we give them a fucking discount.
yeah. No, I
So
understand that.
we subsidize a lot. So if I hear a fucking Quebecer saying like, "Oh, it's gonna be too expensive to make vaccines in here," you're retards. You're a bunch of fucking retards.
Yeah,
Why would you want to have like your own fucking vaccines and medical supply being made here?
no. It, Again, those are some of the things that we need to focus on. And then if it sounds nationalist and saying, let's try to be as sovereign as possible in terms of producing as much of our own stuff as possible,
40
like,
to 45% of people in Quebec want to take that piece of fucking land and separate it for the rest of fucking Canada. So please, people, give me a fucking break about like, oh, you're so nationalist when you want having sovereignty over the shit you make. Yeah, that also like part of your fucking project to separate the fucking province.
yeah, no. It, like,
That's a lot of fucking fuck I said. Quite in the last sentence.
no, it's fine. It's fine. Politics and current events can bring out a lot of passion.
Yeah,
And
true.
to sort of segue potentially to the next issue that is certainly bringing a lot of passions. You wanna bring it up? Do you want me to introduce it?
Uh, no, I don't want to go to the speed thing because I thought that was a good idea to go on. I think
Yeah,
we'll go back to the French thing because I have a lot to say about it.
go
Like,
ahead.
oh yeah, because the thing, like, you wanted to speak about Israel.
Yeah,
All right, I suck at segues anyway. So,
that's fine.
so
So
as of recently, there was escalation in terms of like hostilities toward Israel and Gaza sector. Actually, what
yeah,
happened is Israel is saying that they're receiving rockets and they have received rockets from the Gaza Strip, and now they're bombing the fuck out of these peoples.
yeah. So what's going on right now? And again, I need to stipulate this by saying, folks, this is probably the most hot button of issues. So bear with us as we try to look at this issue with the greatest level of objectivity and logic and reason. Because again, like the second you mention this issue anywhere on social media and you're about to get bombarded. So please, folks, let's bear in mind that we're just trying to look at this issue as objectively as possible. So to begin with what's going on,
So yeah, because
um,
we have to explain that it might seems like quite confusing that a bunch of people that doesn't eat pig with the tip of their dick cut off, being brown and slender, will shoot on other people that don't eat pigs, have the tip of the dick sliced off, and fucking brown slenders, and they have basically the same thing going on. And whatever, go on.
yeah, so what's going on right now, folks, is there has been a rise of tensions and escalations, and unfortunately, a rise of violence with regards to armed clashes between the Israeli Defense Forces, local security, and police forces in Jerusalem. Palestinian protesters coming in from both the West Bank and, of course, the situation in Gaza. So there is, I would say, a dispute. Like, there's a bit of a dispute in terms of who owns a certain group of houses in like the surrounding territory in an area called, and I do apologize for mispronouncing it, but I'll do my best. Sheikh Jarrah, which is close to East Jerusalem, which is one of the most hotly contested areas within not just Israel and the Palestinian territories, but around the world in general. Like, I guess the only comparison that I can even think of in terms of how hotly contested this territory is the South China Sea between China, Vietnam, the Philippines, and the other countries that sort of are in that area. So just
Japan.
just think in terms of that. So East Jerusalem houses, like, East Jerusalem and the surrounding areas, of course, to provide context, has some of the most important religious sites for the three main Abrahamic faiths. So you have Judaism, of course, the Temple Mount and the Western Wall. For Christians, within the Christian quarter of Old Jerusalem, you have the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And of course, in the Armenian quarter, you have St. James's Church. On the border between the Muslim and Christian quarters, you have the Damascus Gate, which is, to my understanding, sealed. And of course, within the Muslim quarter and just above it, you have, of course, the Dome of the Rock. And with it as well, like that, the rock itself, where a lot of things happened, both within Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And of course, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is attached to that complex. So already there are a lot of complex religious feelings towards many of those things. And of course, previous escalations of violence, like the first and second Intifada, and other escalation of violence between the Israeli Defense Forces and both Fatah, which mainly controls the West Bank, and Gaza, which is seen as the more radical and the more extremist of the factions, are constantly going at it. From one side, you see, of course, like the Israeli Jews who are living there, who are like, we're no longer accepting any sort of, we're no longer accepting any bullshit from anyone else. We want to defend this is the only state that we have. We're going to defend it, given all of the past shit that has happened, like the Holocaust and other programs and other forms of discrimination, especially in Europe, and to an extent,
pretty much with the Holocaust, they decided now they need a state. Like the movement of the idea of having a Jewish state that started with the Dreyfus affair in France. And then after that, the culmination of all that was like when they discovered the death camp, and they were like, oh yeah, these guys will never be safe in Europe. We need to move them somewhere else.
Yep. Hey, Caleb, how's it going, buddy? And hello, Jess. You know the drill. What time is it? And tell RJ I say hello as well, and to feed him some treats.
I would bet 9.5.
Yeah. So you have to understand, like, the Jews are in sort of that constant defensive posture, and that they're not willing to take any nonsense, and they're always going to take whatever measures they feel is necessary to defend their one and only Jewish state. At the same time, you have the Palestinian people, like the Palestinian Arabs, again in the West Bank and in the Gaza Strip. Like, a lot of people have considered or have sort of made this notion that Gaza, given that it is so blockaded from the rest of Israel and even from Egypt in terms of the land, and their access to like the Mediterranean Sea is severely limited in terms of fishing. So a lot of people have accused Israel, and to an extent Egypt, of perpetuating an effective open air prison in Gaza. And what's going on in the West Bank, especially in places like Hebron, and other areas like Bethlehem and other areas, like, given how settlement policy in the Palestinian territories in the West Bank, where again Samaria and Judea, again, like, this is what happens when so many religions want to have some sort of claim to the same, like, that sort of like issue was like,
that wasn't always the Jerusalem wasn't always, I think, part of Israel. That was a neutral city or something like that, right?
To explain that, and I know what you're talking about, the initial partitioning of the former British Mandate colony of Palestine at around between 1947 to 1949, the initial partitioning plan would have given certain territories to the Jews and certain territories to the Muslim Arabs, to the Palestinians,
Mm.
while Jerusalem, which is of course the old city of Jerusalem, the surrounding territories, and I think also Bethlehem, that would have been considered an international city,
Mm.
given how important that territory, like old Jerusalem, like the old city of Jerusalem with like the walls and all that, and all of the various churches and other things, that would have been considered an international city, given that reality.
Mm.
So that was the initial reality then. But then, of course, way back in the day, Ben Gurion and all of the other figures made different decisions.
Mm.
So for me, again, like when I see, the escalation of violence, it's on both sides. Like, and again, I do understand to an extent that one side is disproportionately far more powerful, given the Israeli Defense Forces have their Iron Dome air defense system. Their weapons and technology far surpasses that which the Palestinian Arabs have, and it's just for me personally, I do sincerely hope, like, to see people die in general is not, come on, like, you should never, like, violence is never a solution to a problem. It's just
Except
unfortunate.
that if your problem is violence. Violence, violence is never a solution to a problem, unless like your problem is somebody getting violent.
As well, another thing to say, and I'm looking at an article from the BBC that sort of discusses this. Oh, hold on, just 1 second. So, like, a lot of Muslims, of course, took offense to the fact that the escalation of tensions happened right at the end of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan, where Muslims from sunup to sundown are expected to fast for, I think, 30 to 35 days, depending on the situation as well. So, yeah.
A moment, I'm sharing this.
Of course.
Yeah, there you go. And boom. So,
yeah, of course, to say this, we've definitely seen.
Ah.
See, that's a very, very good map that sort of highlights like what sector, like what part of the old city of Jerusalem, like historically belongs to which sect or to which religious group. You have, like, of course, here in Canada, like Prime Minister Trudeau and the Liberals, and of course the Conservative Party under Erin O'Toole have both unilaterally condemned the violence and have shown their support towards Israel. The NDP, given it's more left, they have become, I would say, far more pro-Palestinian in terms of their stance, though, when, like, especially under Jagmeet Singh, though, when Thomas Mulcair was the leader, he certainly had a more pro-Israeli stance, I think, given his own personal beliefs on the issue.
And also, you really wanted the NDP to be a bit more mainstream.
Yeah. So the United States, of course, we've definitely seen a swift reaction from the Republican Party, saying that they are in lockstep with the Israeli state, and of course are now accusing like the Biden administration in waffling on their support for the state of Israel. We've seen, of course, two of the members of the so-called squad in the House, Ilhan Omar and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, like AOC herself, of course, and Rashida Tlaib, who herself is Palestinian in origin. Obviously, the three of them have condemned the situation and have swung their support towards the Palestinian people heavily.
It's a fucking weird thing that, like, of all the shit that doesn't go right in this fucking world, we decided we were going to focus all, like, that's crazy to me, because like I follow a lot of what's going on in Taiwan and Hong Kong, and I'm like, you don't have that same level of outcry when it comes to Taiwan or Hong Kong be getting bullied by fucking China. Then you get, like, for a thing like between Israel and Palestine. I don't understand why people are so passionate about what's going on over there, to a point like they make it a wedge issue.
Again, I partially pointed to, the religiosity, or like to religion itself, as being one of the factors that we need to consider, because again, many of those sites, like again the Temple Mount, slash Noble Sanctuary slash Dome of the Rock, the Western Wall, the Alaska Mosque, just
Yeah.
that thing right
Yeah, but
there.
left-leaning people are not that well known for being that religious, so they must be something. Like I would understand for the Israeli side, and even there, I saw some more like secular arguments defending the Israeli right to defend itself. Like
Yeah.
that's the argument. But on the left side, though, I don't understand like how religion will play a role because they don't give a shit about religion usually.
Well, usually in moments like this, or in moments of terror or chaos, there's always the so-called rally behind the flag effect, or rallying
Yeah,
with their leaders, like what we saw here in Canada, for example, in the early stages of the pandemic, where a lot of us rallied towards
mm,
Trudeau and Legault.
yeah,
So often it's that sort of nationalist effect.
yeah,
So look, I just for me, like, I'd love to visit Israel one day. I'd love to visit the Palestinian territories one day to see the historical and religious sites. As someone who studied history, I just for me, it's just I like seeing it's just disheartening to see that. And again, I will say this, for me as an atheist, like, this is again like it's still scary to this day that people are willing to fight for stuff like that.
yeah.
Like, if you want, like, if let's say you're personally very religious, but like you mind your own business, you go to your religious place of worship,
Which
you
is
do what you do at
awesome.
home, and you're just private about it.
Yeah.
All power to you. I completely understand it. But then when your religious beliefs, or even your your secular political beliefs, compel you to use violence to this extent, like, part of, like, you have to admit,
Mhm.
Joey, like, part of it is part of it is the religious beliefs, and a lot of it
Yeah,
is also,
true.
politics and culture and history as well, that are so intertwined.
True, but on the same time, my question wasn't about that. Like, it was about why people here are so fascinated by it. Why we like it's 100% of our focus. Like when you talk about international relation, like that's the first thing that pops. Like I understand
Yeah.
like the
Okay.
story
Yeah.
and everything,
Mhm.
but why everybody's digging at themselves a fucking trench around it? Like I understand religious part for the Israeli, but again I've heard some really secular argument for it. All right. So it has nothing to do for some
Because,
people about religion, but on the
well,
left, they don't care about religion. So why being so pro-Palestinian then?
Well, on the left, it's for the left, it's more like the intersectionalist argument, like oppressed people over the world have to sort of band together in one way or another.
Yeah,
Another factor that we need to consider why we're so fascinated, or why we're so exposed to it here, even in Canada and the United States, is the fact that you have, of course, you have a lot of Jews who live here in Montreal. You have a lot of, like,
yeah,
Palestinian Arabs and those who are related to them, like in like Lebanon and Syria, Jordan, Egypt. So, like, you have sort of those connections as well. And the fact that we're hearing it, like, we're hearing what's going on both sides from those immigrant communities, and the fact that we're so intertwined here in a multicultural city, like, we're going to get it one way or another. Like, a similar thing could be a similar situation like that could be what happened in Armenia.
yeah,
Armenia and Artsakh, like like the fact that there's a huge Armenian community here in Montreal, and the similar community of Turks. Like, we feel like whenever there is a conflict in the home country, we sort of feel some of the effects here, at least
yeah.
culturally and personally.
Yeah, because you
Here,
see people protesting. I saw a protest of Muslim Chinese like a
the
year ago.
Uyghurs, yes.
Yeah, the Uyghurs. Yeah, exactly. But no, but on the same time, like everybody and their dog have an opinion about it. It's not only Montrealers that
No, of
people from
course, of course.
cosmopolitan cities. Like as far back as Bécamo, you have more chance to get hit by the thunder than actually meeting a Jews over there. Like it's fucking white. It's just white
Well,
people, and they all have an opinion about it. And I'm pretty sure none of them can place it on a map like Jerusalem or fucking Israel.
well, again, given how polarizing the
Yeah,
issue is, and given, of course, given the nature of, mainstream and social media, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict will always generate clicks in one way or another.
oh,
Given
for
the
sure.
reality, given the reality of social and mainstream media, like I'm seeing it on my own personal Facebook and Instagram feed, like a lot of posts from people on both sides of the issue posting, different facts and figures and different philosophical arguments either for and or against Israel or the Palestinian territories, and how both sides are attempting to rectify the situation, both in terms of like the violent aspects, the political and the cultural aspects, seeing, celebrities getting involved with it, like Mayim Bialik posting her own person, like Maya Bialik, who of course is Amy Farrah Fowler on The Big Bang Theory, posting her complex issues on it. You have, of course, the former porn star, what's her name? Frick, I forgot the name of the porn star, like the one from Lebanon, the glasses.
Mia Khalifa.
Yeah, Mia Khalifa, of course, posting things, sort of supporting the Palestinians. Of course, DJ Khaled. Himself being Palestinian himself.
Oh,
so like,
okay.
so like, it's just that mass mobilization, social, it just goes to show you how interconnected the world is, and given as well that thank you, Caleb. Given how our brains and our minds are still not evolved to
see, that's
fully...
the only piece of trivia that he actually shared with us.
Thanks, dude. So, like, again, it goes to show you the fact that everything is just so interconnected, and all of the breaking news notifications, and the fact that our minds are still so primitive in processing it, and the fact that we still feel a sort of tribalism in one way or another.
A need to have an opinion about it.
Yeah.
Fucking crazy. Like, they could be shooting at each other. If you don't read the news, you don't know about it, and it doesn't change anything in your life.
Well, another thing we have to mention as well, the fact that 20, 30 years ago, it was like it still took some time for breaking news to be transmitted from halfway around the world.
Yeah.
The fact that, the internet 30 years ago pretty much was non-existent. The fact that you had other like cell phones and all, like now, the fact that information travels so quickly is another factor that we need to consider. So...
And people are just getting angry at reading headlines, but they don't read the article, and they fucking reshare it.
Yeah.
Yeah, even Twitter has, like, sometimes I would reshare just like a quote or something, like just because the headline make me laugh, but I didn't actually read the whole thing. And like, you'd be like, hey, you didn't click on the link. You sure you don't want to read it before you share it?
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's not the point.
Yeah. Yeah. So... Again, folks, we need to be careful with how we proceed with such sensitive issues. Like, again, like, this is why, like, I try to look at all sides of the issue to the best of my ability. Though, of course, I myself and everyone else have their biases, and their own opinions. I'm just sincerely hoping that we can resolve this issue peacefully and not see a further unnecessary escalation of violence, because already we've lost a lot of people to the coronavirus. Like, adding...
I don't want to depress you, but I feel like that fucking ship sailed.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Like, I talked to a guy from there, and he told basically an Israeli, and he basically told me like, nah, there's no way it's gonna work out. Yeah.
Anyways, I think at this point.
Yes. You want to add anything before we close that?
Not at this point, though. Just to say, like, if for those who want to find me again, my Instagram handle is Captain Yolo 562. I did an episode of my show, The Adventures of Captain Yolo, last Saturday at 7. I'm going to do another episode of it next Saturday. Though I may consider doing something akin to like what my girlfriend Melanie Asafa, Real Delight, does. Like, maybe expand my show to like once a week on Saturdays. But like every second week, I just do like a rambling thing where I just talk about like what I want to talk about. Like last time, again, I talked about like the Bad Batch, and maybe this Saturday. At 7 p.m., maybe have something like, hey, if anyone wants to come on and just have like a conversation, like we can have a conversation. So I may consider doing that for this Saturday. And if I do make that decision, then certainly I will let everyone know on Instagram.
All right. And for the rest of the week, what we have, keep following the 34. We
Hmm.
have Claudio and Victoria that are still to do the movie trivia. I think it's tomorrow, if I remember well.
Yep, I think so. Yes.
Oh, that's cool. And also on, I think, keep following Peter and Vance. They're doing the Rapid Flames.
Hmm.
Also, Saturday afternoon podcast is still going on. I have this week. I'm receiving Bo Reza, comedian from Montreal. He's really
Hmm.
really funny. And Sunday is gonna be a plain vanilla podcast. It's gonna be just the four of us: me, Peter, Claudio, and Victoria. And also stay tuned because we have confirmed a pretty cool guest. It's George Sandrizas. Is
Ooh.
yeah, one of the guy, the panelist guy of on the morning show. So
Yep.
yeah, that's going to be pretty awesome. So stay tuned and more cool shit coming. And on this, folks, I'm telling ya, thank you, fuck you, bye.